Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to stately Vaughan Manor. So, welcome today to the manor which is very soon to be under construction. We've got some construction work that's going to be going on at the back part of the manor back there. Uh, the staff here at the manor have been complaining, you see. They're always complaining about something, they're always going on, oh, when are we going to get running water? Oh, when are we going to get electricity in the staff quarters? And I said, okay, fine. I'll do that stuff. So we're having some construction work done here at the manor. And one of the places I'm having construction work done is in the back room. And in this back room in the back of the manor here has pretty much been a storage room forever. And there's a closet back there. The storage room is mostly a storage room for books. And we've got to empty all this out so it could be worked on, which is a real drag and involves actual labor, which I do not enjoy. But there's a closet back there that I swear, I haven't opened the door to this closet for like 10 years. And so there was a bunch of stuff in there that I just completely forgot about. And there's a top shelf there in the closet, and I was looking up there, and there's a bunch of books, it's always exciting to find books you've forgotten about. And to my joy, they were all horror books. So, any excuse to make a video. So, I pulled out all the horror books that I found lurking in the closet back there. And I thought I would share them with you. So what have we got here? Got a few different books that I found up there that I was pretty excited about. Because I remember having these books, but I just didn't know what happened to them. And the first one of these horrors, is this book, Why Not You and I, which was a collection of stories by the great Carl Edward Wagner. Carl Edward Wagner is probably best known for his fantasy series, his sword and sorcery series about Cain, the Immortal Swordsman. Cain, the Immortal Swordsman, who is kind of an anti-hero, very gothic kind of fantasy, a lot of Robert E. Howard influence. But he also wrote horror stories, great horror stories, a lot of influence from the old pulps because he loved the old pulps. Carl Ed Wagner was also a great editor. He published a bunch of, or had published a bunch of different books featuring some old pulp writers and stuff like that. He was just great. We lost him in the mid-90s. I believe he died in 1994. Unfortunately, Carl Edward Wagner was an alcoholic, and he drank himself to death, unfortunately. It was a terrible loss, a real tragedy for those of us who like horror literature, because this guy was great. And this book is fantastic. I had wondered what happened to it, and I was going to order another copy at one point, but I looked online, and this thing, it's commanding a hefty price, usually, this book. It's in high demand. I bought it somewhere. I've got this ripped-off sticker on the front. I have no idea what I paid for it, but it wasn't that much. So glad I found it. Great stories in here from Carl Edward Wagner. So that's the first thing. What's the second thing I found up there? This was a good one. Algernon Blackwood. This is Tales of the Uncanny and Supernatural. Look at this fella. He's not having a good evening, this poor guy. So, this is a great collection. I was looking through it. And it's got a bunch of stories in here. Usually, if you find Algernon Blackwood books, they're like best of books. The best of Algernon Blackwood, usually that's what you're going to find. So a lot of times the contents of those volumes are going to be the same. But this one has a bunch of stories you don't see in print very often. The Doll, Running Wolf, The Valley of the Beasts, The Decoy, The Touch of Pan, The Lost Valley. Just a bunch of stories that they're kind of hard to find. Now, if you've got a Kindle, of course, you can get everything that Blackwood wrote. It's a great thing about ebooks, but in print, they're tough. So it was fun to find this book. 60s book, I believe. Yeah, 1968 was when this particular book was published, and it's pretty cool. So Algernon Blackwood was lurking in the closet there. What else did I find? This was pretty cool as well. It's a penguin. Yay! This is the Penguin book of vampire stories. We got an Edward Gorey cover there, which was really cool. Anytime Edward Gorey does some illustrations, it's fantastic. So the Penguin book of vampire stories, I checked out the contents. Again, great. You've got a lot of the classics. You've got Carmilla, of course. Fantastic vampire story. Got Dracula's Guest, of course. But then you've also got some other things like The Transfer by Algernon Blackwood. You got The Room in the Tower by E.F. Benson, who I'm going to be talking about one of these days. Got an M.R. James story, an episode of Cathedral History. And we even got Shamblau by C.L. Moore, a space vampire story. Lots of great stories in this volume. I think this is still in print, maybe? Like an edition of it, maybe? You can still get it, I'm pretty sure, but this is an older one that was lurking in the closet. So that's cool. I look forward to reading that. A lot of these books I've read, some of them I have not read. This is one that I've read. This is The Best Supernatural Tales of Arthur Conan Doyle. Arthur Conan Doyle, who we will be revisiting tomorrow for Sherlock Saturday. But he did a lot of supernatural stuff. And they were pretty good. I remember this being a pretty good book, published by Dover. And look at that cool cover. Yeah. Creepy. So that was cool. What else did I find back there? This was great. By Robert Bloch, the author of Psycho. Anytime you say Robert Bloch, you have to obligatorily say the author of Psycho. So Robert Bloch, the author of Psycho, he used to do a bunch of old stories in Strange Tales and Weird Tales in his early career, and that's what this is. Flowers from the Moon and Other Lunacies. Look at that great cover with the werewolves chomping down on some dude's bones. That's great. And in the back, you get more werewolf hanging out there. So this is a good one. This is published by Arkham House, and it was in the 90s that this one was published, right? I'm not crazy. It was the 90s. 98. Published in 1998. Bunch of great old stories from the pulps very early from this guy's career. And I haven't read it. I've meant to read it. I meant to read it and then just forgot to do it or something. And so it's been lurking up there all this time, and I can't wait to get to it. That's pretty exciting. I don't know when I'll actually read it because you know how my reading schedule is. But this is cool. It's a Mammoth book. Do you guys remember the Mammoth books? These big fatty books. I don't even know. Maybe they're still around. I don't know. But this is the Mammoth Book of Zombies, which is pretty cool. And I got this for $2.98 at Half Price Books. Worth every penny. Got a cool looking zombie right there. This is a Stephen Jones anthology. Stephen Jones, who is edited by 60 million anthologies, I'm pretty sure. He was right around 60 million and two, somewhere around there. Big book of zombies. And the standout in this one is from Carl Edward Wagner. Styx, one of his most famous horror stories, is in this volume. This volume's worth it just for that, just to get Styx. It's been reprinted quite a few times, but that's a great story. And you also got a Manly Wade Willman story in here. M.R. James, again, A Warning to the Curious. Got Reanimator from H.P. Lovecraft, which I talked about a couple weeks ago. Just a lot of great stuff. The Night After the Night of the Living Dead by Christopher Fowler. Great stuff. Interesting stuff. Zombies. The Mammoth Book of Zombies. Who doesn't like zombies? Those people who say they don't like zombies, they're lying. Everybody likes zombies. What else do I have? This is pretty cool. I'll put both of these out. I got some Robert E. Howard, and anytime you get Robert E. Howard, it's cool. Robert E. Howard wrote some horror stories, some good ones and some not so good ones, but he wrote some good stuff for Weird Tales. Now you look at this cover and you think Lovecraft. It's Cthulhu, the Mythos and Kindred Horrors, but it's actually by Robert E. Howard. Look at that great cover. This is the best Lovecraft cover that's not on a Lovecraft book, because it's got Cthulhu sitting right there, the great statue. But he wrote some Cthulhu Mythos stories, and those stories are in here, along with a bunch of other cool stories. This was published by Baen Books, and later on, I think it was later on, is when they made a whole series of Robert E. Howard's, and this is one of them. Trails in Darkness has some of his horror stories, and this one also has a guy fighting a giant ape on the cover, which is appropriate because in Robert E. Howard stories, you tend to fight giant apes. It just is something that just happened a lot. Also found this. This is pretty exciting. This is Joe R. Lansdale, one of my favorite writers ever. Love Joe R. Lansdale. And this is an early book from him. This is Act of Love by Joe R. Lansdale. This is pretty cool. This is an old serial killer story from, what was it, 81? When was this printed? Yeah, 81. So it was an early serial killer novel. They had novels about serial killers back then, but not like they had later on when there was a big serial killer boom. So early serial killer stuff, which I'm not usually into that, but Joe R. Lansdale, he makes anything good. So glad to have found Act of Love. Another one of my favorites, Richard Matheson, a Richard Matheson book I haven't read. For a long time I thought I read it, but no, I didn't read it. This is Hunted Past Reason by Richard Matheson. And I've heard conflicting reports about this book. I've heard it's terrible. I hear it's okay. A couple people have even said it's good. So I've heard mixed reviews of this guy, Hunted Past Reason. It's one of his later books. It's a suspense novel. I really ought to read it because it's Richard Matheson and I love that guy. So I'll give it a shot. I don't know when I'll get to it, but definitely. Kind of cool to have found that in there. What else did I got? Now, this is an author I've never read, a horror author I've never read. This is Bentley Little, and this novel is The Walking. So I'm going to ask you guys, hey, have any of you read Bentley Little? Is he worth reading? Is this a good book, The Walking? Stephen King, in his obligatory blurb, says, the horror event of the year. Is it the horror event of the year? Was it the horror event of the year? He puts his name on everything, Stephen King, so I don't know if I can really trust him. I'm reading every book by him, but can I trust him on blurbs? I don't know. So let me know. Bentley Little, The Walking. Should I read this book? You tell me. And there's some other stuff in here. This one's really cool, if only for the cover. Plus, it's Fritz Leiber, who's a great writer. This is Shadows with Eyes. 6 Tales of Crawling Horror. And just look at that cover. That is a creepy-ass cover. And it's beat to hell, this book. I think I might have more than one copy of this. I think I might have seen this before recently, but not this copy. This copy's it's been up there a while in the closet. So, Shadows with Eyes by Fritz Leiber. Good stuff, I think. I might have gotten another copy of that recently from one of my eBay hauls. I'm not sure. This one is The Werewolf of Curt by H. Warner Munn, who is a writer from the olden days. It says on the cover, inspired by H.P. Lovecraft. Anything to put Lovecraft on the cover. Lovecraft in a letter once, he was not a big fan of vampires or werewolves or traditional monsters. So in a letter once he said, maybe one way you can make a werewolf story interesting is if you told it from the werewolf perspective. That is the inspiration for this story by H. Warner Munn. I have read this, but it's been so long. I think I was literally a teenager maybe when I read it, that I remember very little about it. I don't even remember if it's good. I do remember that it has a very Oliver Reed-looking werewolf, which they took straight from the Curse of the Werewolf poster. So, yeah. Don't remember much about it. Might get to it one of these days. Let's see. What else do I have in here? The year's best horror stories, series 5. Look at that guy hanging out, looking over the horror stories of this year. What year was this for the year's best horror stories? It was 1977. There's some good stuff in here. Shatterday from Harlan Ellison is in here. That was new. That was one of the best new stories of the year. Belson Express from Fritz Leiber, which is a pretty important horror story, was in this one. A bunch of other stuff was in this one. Great thing about these old horror anthologies is you never really know what you're going to get. A lot of forgotten stories you could find in these guys. That a lot of them turn out to be really good. Some of them not so good. But usually you'll find something cool in these old horror anthologies. I found this. This is a big, massive omnibus volume of Peter Benchley, Jaws, Beast, The Girl of the Sea of Cortez, which doesn't sound horror, but Jaws is kind of horror. I don't know what Beast is. I've never read any of those. I have never read Peter Benchley. I intended to, obviously, because I bought this big book. I don't know how much I paid for it, but I got this big omnibus volume book, so I must have been intending to read it. Let me know, is Jaws the novel worth reading? I know the movie was fantastic, but I don't hear people talking about the book that often. People always talk about the movie. No one ever talks about the book, which, should that make me worry? I don't know. But I've got it, so let me know if I should read it. Tell me. Now, the next thing is the greatest reference book. It's a reference book. It's the greatest reference book you'll ever find. This is Creature Features, the science fiction, fantasy, and horror movie guide that came out in 1997, this edition. John Stanley. John Stanley, here in the San Francisco Bay Area, used to host the late-night horror show Creature Features, where he would show a really bad schlocky horror movie every Saturday night, and I used to stay awake to watch that show. Bob Wilkins was the original host, and then John Stanley took over. I like John Stanley a lot. He used to interview all these directors and actors and things, and he was way into horror and horror movies, and he does these great little capsule reviews of a ton of horror movies you've never heard of. It's all 20th century horror movies, so all classics now, some not so classic. Some terrible movies that have been lost to the winds of time, but you could find out about them here in the Creature Features movie guide. This is an awesome little thing to have if you like horror movies, and I do. But the best thing in this little haul from the closet is this book, Foundations of Fear, anthology edited by David G. Hartwell. You can see the heavy hitters from horror that are in this book. This is the sequel anthology to this, one of the most important horror anthologies, The Dark Descent, which was the winner of the World Fantasy Award. And you can see it has everybody in this one too. This was a great anthology. Fantastic. I'm actually reading this one this October for Halloween. And this is the sequel anthology. I forgot there even was such a thing, but there is one. And I don't think I've read Foundations of Fear, although I've read just about everything in it. I'm looking through here. You've got At the Mountains of Madness, the whole novel. That's fantastic. Great God Pan. Sand Kings from George R. R. Martin. All stories that I read, but it would be fun, of course, to read them again. Who Goes There, which was the basis for the film The Thing, both The Things, by John W. Campbell. I've read that one as well. But great anthology, so a great sequel anthology. And I was pretty happy to find that book. That was pretty cool. So that was the Horror Haul from the Closet. any excuse to make a video. So I hope you enjoyed it. It was fun. It's fun to find old books that you just left somewhere. And these books were lying around in that closet for a while. Had the squeaky closet door that creaked when you opened it because it hadn't been opened for so long. Perfect. So that was that. I also found a couple Dean Koontz books in there that I showed you the other day when I told that classic story about Dean Koontz. So, yeah. Hope you enjoyed it. I will catch you next time, tomorrow. Be sure to tune in for Sherlock Saturday when we talk about the Sign of Four. Awesome stuff. I will see you then.